Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Jeen in the 15-minute pool on ICC. All right, been a little while since I played on ICC. I was trying to play a game on Lichess, but I couldn't log into the site. It just wasn't loading for me. I think maybe their server is experiencing, I don't know, high volume, or maybe they're making a site update, something like that. So back to ICC for this game. Can't remember the last time I played a 15-minute game on ICC, but we have a Slav on our hands. I'm going to play knight f3, my usual flexible move on move 3. I like queen c2, so I'm going to stick with this line. I've been patronizing this variation frequently of late. So my opponent, 1764, peak rating of 1921, and they play e6, a solid move. I think I'm going to go with g3 and play for a fianchetto of the light square bishop. I've also played bishop g5 before in that position. We'll mix it up today. I'm a little bit tired today, so I think playing a 15-minute game with no increment could be a good way to kickstart my energy levels, because when you're playing without increment, you have to pay closer attention to the clock, obviously. And since I'm a bit tired, I'm going to pay extra close attention and make sure I'm not needlessly wasting seconds in a middle game where I could just fire off a move. I think that's very important if you're an OTB player. You have to recognize moments in your form when you might be vulnerable in an over-the-board game and try to correct that. Try to correct it before it becomes a problem, if that makes sense. Address it, rather. I know if I slept poorly the night before a big tournament game, I'll intentionally sit at the board longer and not walk around, as is customary during a tournament game. You know, you get up and walk around in between moves. But if I'm tired, I'll make a point to sit at the board more than I usually would to force myself to focus. Likewise, if you've ever played a tournament game when you're sick, like let's say you have a cold or something, you have to make a strong effort to stay at the board and conserve your energy. I think it's crucial. I remember reading about some top player who said that he once played a tournament where he was very seriously ill, like with a flu or something, and was running a high fever. And ironically, he said he played the best he's ever played in a tournament as far as his focus goes, because he was used to walking around, and having that sickness just absolutely forced him to stay at the board. He said he couldn't have played otherwise. Like, he was physically almost too weak to get up from the board. And somehow he was able to grind out some wins and played a good event. Okay, so Jeen is making a bunch of pawn moves. He's played, how many pawn moves is that? 5 pawn moves in the first 6 moves. I don't think I can directly take advantage of this. I'm probably just going to castle and then go for knight bd2 and pawn to e4. Just thinking if I want to go knight bd2 first or e4 directly. Or, sorry, castles and then knight bd2 and then e4. I'm going to play knight bd2. I don't think I have to castle yet. If he plays something nondescript like knight bd7, I probably will not play e4, because then if d takes e4, knight takes e4, there is this check possibility. Bishop b4 check. Maybe knight takes e4, queen takes e4, then bishop b4 check. I'd rather rule that out if possible, so likely I'll castle on the next move. a6, you could argue, does fit in with the Slav setup. If you're familiar with the chameleon variation of the Slav, or the Shevchenko Slav it's sometimes called, then this move is often played to spur b5. But h6, I don't think you can make a good argument for h6. I don't see the point of that move. I'm not going to play knight g5, nor would I really strongly consider bishop g5 when I'm fianchettoed on the same wing. So black pins me with this move. Let's just castle. So this bishop is kind of floating out here. So perhaps black's idea is that if I play e4 now, then they can play bishop takes d2. And if I continue with bishop takes d2, I would lose the pawn. So let's say knight takes d2. But then the d takes e4, and this pawn is loose on d4. So if that's what they're planning, that's kind of clever. I'm thinking about just playing a3 to kick the bishop away. in an attempt to win the bishop pair. Yeah, and let's do that. I said I was going to purposefully mind my time and try to move fast in the middle game, and we're technically on the border between the opening and the middle game. No pieces have been exchanged. Although, without any knowledge of book lines, I hesitate to call this an opening still. And both sides are castled, so we're heading into middle game territory. So if bishop takes d2, I can take back either way with my knight or my bishop. I'm leaning towards knight because I would like to go e4 and try to open some lines while black is underdeveloped. Yeah, and here I will almost certainly play e4. Yeah, nothing else is jumping out at me. I could try to expand on the queen side, but this is straightforward. We could have some swaps on this square. Maybe black will play d takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes e4, knight d7, and try to get the knight over to f6. I believe black will experience problems with this bishop on c8 all the same. So I may play to restrict this piece even further. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my dark square bishop. I might leave that piece be for a while. He takes on c4. Well, if I were black, I wouldn't let this pawn duo, pawns on d4, e4, stick around for too long. I'll probably take with my knight here. He might go b5. Attacking the knight, maybe knight c to e5 in that case. Attacking c6. If bishop b7, I feel like I have a good grip on the c5 square. I could also take with the queen, but queen takes, he can still play b5, so I think I'd rather take with the knight. Let's do that. If knight bd7, then bishop f4 looks good. So I would bet that b5 is played. b5, knight ce5, bishop b7. And I'll be looking to stop black from playing c5 in the near future there. I might even make use of the b4 move to try to clamp this square, if possible. So black does play knight bd7, so I mentioned bishop f4 here. Looks normal. I think b4 also deserves attention because then I get an outpost on a5 to use. If he wants to continue with knight b6 and offer a trade of knights, it would be nice to have knight a5 at my disposal, stopping a trade. Maybe that's a good reason to play b4 over bishop f4. The f4 square is a great post for the bishop, but aside from connecting the rooks, the only immediate benefit I get is that I maybe can use the d6 square, but I kind of like being able to use the a5 square even more. There is a possibility of bishop f4, knight b6, and then knight a5, but my knight is undefended there. Maybe he can go knight bd5, as weird as that looks, with a discovery. I can't find a downside to b4. b4, knight b6, knight a5. b4 also stops him from playing a5. That would just lose a pawn. And it enhances control over c5. So let's do it. We're attempting to squeeze our opponent. And if the knight lands on a5, he'll have to figure out a way to defend b7 so he can get his bishop out. And even developing the bishop to d7 at some point in the future isn't inspiring for him. The bishop has no scope there. He might play the rook to a7 to defend the pawn, so like knight b6, knight a5, rook a7. I'd probably proceed with bishop f4 in that case. I even have the funny threat of bishop b8 at some point. Black is in a bind here. Rook e8. So that frees up the f8 square. He might try to transfer his knight. Knight f8, and then maybe pop the knight out to g6. No immediate breakthroughs that tempt me. I mean, e5 I won't play because he can play knight d5. I think building up the position is in order. Bishop f4, knight f8, and then maybe knight f to e5. So that if knight g6, I can take and mess up his pawns. But the d4 pawn could hang, although that's almost a poisoned pawn for him. Maybe bishop f4, knight f8, rook a d1. Just defending d4. He can get the knight to g6, but even dropping the bishop back to e3 or even all the way to c1, in fact, looks okay. I could also play rook d1 right now, and then if knight f8, knight fe5. Looking to stop knight to g6. It's a little fancy. Kind of depends where I want my rooks. Probably d1 and c1 are good destinations for the rooks. Otherwise, d1 and e1 just backing up the d and e pawns makes sense. So even though I still have to develop my bishop so the rooks communicate, I still want to think about what rook arrangement I'm going for. I'm liking the rook d1, knight f8, knight fe5 plan. I think I'll go for that. We still haven't committed this bishop. Okay, and he immediately plays rook b8, but the problem with that move is I just have bishop f4 with tempo now. And all he could do is go back to a8. So this is a no-brainer move. Black is not active enough to have set up a trap or something with rook b8, so there's no use in second-guessing bishop f4. It's just a move that has to be played. So he's going to go back to a8, and then we can choose how to proceed. Knight d6 is tempting. Even bishop d6, looking to swap the bishops, but I kind of just want to play rook c1 and sit on the position and ask him how in the world he's going to untangle here. Likewise, knight a5, attacking b7 comes to mind. It would be nice to get this knight routed to c5 at some stage. So if knight a5, I can always drop back to b3 and go to c5. So candidate moves here, knight a5, rook ac1, bishop d6, knight d6. All of those are moves I'm looking at. I think I like knight a5. Let's do this one. I'm even dreaming of clearing this c-pawn and somehow playing bishop c7 down the road. It's probably not going to happen, but it would be really neat if it did. Okay, and he lashes out with g5. Not uncommon when you're lacking space to attempt to do something like this. So I could play bishop e3. That would be my most comfortable retreat. I guess his idea is knight g4, attacking the bishop. It's not a great plan, but it's something. Probably I should play bishop d2 here, just so that he can't play knight g4 with tempo. I could also play the bishop all the way back to c1 and then put it on b2. That's a cool plan. Because on d2, where's my bishop really going? And also, is it that much worse on c1 compared to d2? Probably not. So I'm going to undevelop my bishop because I like the prospect of a future bishop b2. Plays queen c7. h4 could be played, attacking this pawn. Also, bishop b2 could simply be played. His queen is pinned here, so even d5 is an idea I'm looking at, but I think I should put the bishop on b2 first. So let's play that. He still cannot play b6 because I have knight takes c6. He plays the bishop back to f8. Now rook c1 would complete the picture here. There's also that d5 move. Is this time to strike with d5? If d5, e takes d5, e takes d5, my pieces are springing to life. And we have this newly placed bishop here for increased attacking prospects. Does rook c1 help us that much? It might be redundant to play this move. If d5, e5, then I can just take on c6, and I might simply win a pawn. All right, I've convinced myself. Let's do it. The time to act is now. Not doing as well in the time management department as I would have liked, but I have a great position to show for it through 18 moves. He has to be cautious here, otherwise he's going to be experiencing some pain soon. So we'll just take back. So now there's tension between these two pawns. I guess he could think about c5 if he doesn't want to lose that pawn. I would probably play rook c1 in that case and line up against the c pawn. Yeah, I think rook c1 is the next move to play, everything else being equal, unless I can win a pawn on c6. He still is struggling with his light square bishop. So if c5, rook ac1, b6 makes sense to try to get the bishop to b7. I have my bishop lurking on g2, though, and if he plays c5, obstacles are being removed on this diagonal to maybe present black with problems. So he does play c5. Anything with d6 either that I can consider? d6, bishop takes d6. Probably nothing there. So if rook ac1, b6, will I jump into c6, or will I do something else? Like d6, bishop takes d6, knight takes g5. Nah, that's unsound. He could get two pieces for the rook in that case. I could play knight d4 here. Try to get my knight into f5. That's an interesting plan. Seems premature somehow. I'm just going to play this. If b6, knight b3, bishop b7, I have queen f5. I'm thinking. And then he doesn't have a bishop on c8 anymore. And I'll be hitting this knight. Maybe I could have even considered queen f5 on the previous move. But I feel like it would be better when his bishop's on b7. I'd be attacking f6 well. I'd be reinforcing this pawn. Looks promising. Gotta watch the time. No increment, remember? Jeen from Argentina. I think he's defended well over the last couple moves. I mean, I'm skeptical of this approach, but he hasn't gotten checkmated or lost any material or opened the position hugely to his detriment yet. I think it's brewing still, but queen c7, bishop f8, e takes d5, c5. It's working out all right. Plays rook b8, so the rook makes an appearance on that square again this game. Not sure why he would play that. Now I'm really looking at knight d4. Trying to get the knight up to f5, but he might play knight e5 in reply. Maybe just knight b3 here. Simple move. Drop it back. Or knight c4. Similar simple plans. Knight c4, he can take here. I have d6. Not sure I want to get that complicated. Queen f5 also comes to mind. Queen f5 might just be good. Queen f5, if knight e5, I have bishop takes e5. Yeah, let's do that. It makes me a bit nervous to oppose the bishop here, but his knight is loose at all times on f6, so he can't really afford to move this knight. And if knight e5, bishop takes e5, and I'm on his queen. Okay, so he plays that, but now I have d6 with tempo, so let's play that. I'm down to 242, so got to be quick. If queen b6, knight c4. Still opposing that bishop. I wish on queen b6 I could just take c5, but I got a couple loose pieces right here and here. Maybe just bishop takes f6 is working. Queen b6, bishop takes f6. Idea, if knight takes f6, I have d7. Nah, but probably queen b6, knight c4. Just drive his queen away first is smarter. Okay, so he does that. This guy's tenacious. I'm going to drop back. Just so he doesn't have any nasty discoveries. And I want the tension to be released here too. If he trades, I might even invade on c7. Just stick the queen there. I forgot how cutthroat playing without an increment is. Okay, let's take that one. Rook e1. Nah. That would drop a pawn. Queen b6. Let's actually go h4. I'm just trying to undermine his pawns a little bit. If g4, I have knight h2, and then f6 and g4 are both loose. Seems precarious for him. Not sure if this move really threatens much, because he might just ignore the attack on g5, but again, the point is it's hard for him to move. Maybe queen f6 could be played. Trying to bear down on f2. But then rook e1, and he doesn't have his knight to come to here. Although he has knight d6, though. Got to bear in mind that this knight can move backwards and take the pawn on d6. Sometimes in these 15-minute games, I like my position so much, I'll just sit there and try to find like the knockout, and I'll get into time pressure as a result. So I'm trying to work on that. Okay, so if rook e1, knight takes d6 is the idea. The very annoying idea. I'm going to take here first. See which way he recaptures. Maybe knight h2. And then if knight takes d6, knight g4. Probably not winning anything, though. Amazingly enough. Okay, I'm going to do this. And my idea is if b5, knight e3, knight takes d6, I have rook takes d6. And then queen takes d6, knight f5 check. Not sure about this, but I have a minute 17, so I'm not sure about a whole lot. I hope he falls for it. So knight takes d6, rook takes d6. Let's see if we get that tactic. Probably bishop b7 is a good move, or should be played for him. Still a little unclear if he does that. I mean, I feel like I should have the advantage, but I'm not sure. Can he play knight takes g3 here? I have knight d5 in that case. He has knight e2 check. Messy. Maybe if knight takes, just f takes, rook takes e3, take here. He takes f3. Also messy. Yeah, I did not want this to happen. What will I do against bishop b7? Let's use our time to figure that out. Probably take c5, even though it looks scary. Knight d4 maybe. I think knight d4 is a decent move. Kind of menacing stuff on f5. Still, I wonder about knight takes g3, but I have all these knight moves I can make, like knight d5, in between move. f2 is covered by my queen, and I'm threatening bishop takes e4 here. I'm also threatening to come in on f5. A situation where both our kings are weak too. Maybe his more than mine if I get to check him on f5. We'll find out. If bishop f5, or bishop b7 rather, I'm thinking knight df5 check, followed by knight e7. Depends where his king goes. If king g8, definitely knight e7. If king h8, I might go to a different square. We'll see. So let's give this check. That also blocks his queen, so that's convenient. If king h8, maybe queen e2. Looking to maneuver over to h5. I don't think he'll play king h7 because that's on the same diagonal as my queen. Still, knight e7 might be strong there. So he plays king g8. So this looks like an easy decision to play knight e7. And he'll have to give the exchange. I also have knight g4 here. Knight g4 is nifty. And if queen takes f5, knight h6. Let's do that. That might even be better. Nice, queen e6. Nah, I changed my mind. We're keeping it simple. Too much to calculate and not enough time. Let's just go for the exchange. But now he's going to drop that. So we won a valuable piece. We're getting another check-in. King f8. Probably, let's just play king g2. Maybe with an eye towards playing rook h1. I'm sure d7 was also good there, but again, in the interest of keeping it simple. Now rook h6 is coming. Plays knight d3. Okay, let's go here. Attack that queen. He can play queen b2. I'll just run away to f1 and cover the f2 pawn. Yeah, this is going to be a disaster for black. Check. Let's just take that. Taking d8 also would have been very strong. Okay, and he forfeits on time. So a messy game at the end. I let this one get out of control. I'm not exactly sure where that happened or what my inaccuracy was. It felt like the tide shifted a little bit when he played g5. I didn't think about this idea too much because I didn't think black would weaken their king in such a manner, and I just honestly thought that it would be their undoing. Maybe bishop c1 to b2 is a bit too fancy. I'm also doubting whether d5 was well timed. All of my moves looked pretty normal. Just visually, black is restricted to the last 3 ranks, and I have all this space. I have a pawn on d6. But as I've said before, with great space comes great responsibility, and you can occasionally be exposed as overextended. So I have a feeling this is all good for white, but when we began to hit time pressure, it got murky. Like when I'm playing the knight back to c4, trying to defend my d6 pawn, this is where I started to feel like my position was a little overextended. And he avoided the tactic. He saw knight takes d6, rook takes d6, queen takes d6, knight f5. There was some unclear stuff happening on g3. Like I wondered at various moments if he could swipe this pawn, and then if f takes g3, rook takes e3. Really not sure. Maybe knight a5 is also too fancy. Maybe I should just jump into d6. If I play knight d6 here, I will win the bishop pair. But I was trying to strangle him and prevent queenside breaks at the same time. So we'll find out when we look through it with the engine. So this queen c2 variation, I think d takes c4 or g6 are the best moves. E6 is certainly fine as well. I just wouldn't voluntarily lock in this bishop. With d takes c4 and g6, black has better chances to get this piece out. So if you play e6, you got to know what you're doing in regards to the light square bishop. Yeah, and a6, it looked like black was kind of mixing systems here. I mean, with a6, you'd think that black would want to play b5, but then abruptly he switches over to the king side and plays h6 for no apparent reason. And I said that I wasn't going to play bishop g5 once I fianchettoed over here because imagine black plays some normal move, let's say knight bd7. If I do this, then h6 can happen. And because I fianchettoed, I can't go bishop h4 due to g5, and I have no g3 square to drop back to. That's why when you fianchettoed on one wing, you usually don't want to develop your other bishop to that same wing. They don't fit together too well. So h6 in my mind is just a waste of time. So I went knight bd2. I'm putting the knight on d2 rather than c3, because if the knight goes to c3, there is the possibility of d takes c4. So then he pinned. I just castled. He castled. Here I played a3. I'm going to load up the engine now just to see what it likes. It says play e4 straight away, or c5. I thought briefly about c5, trying to cut off the bishop's retreat, but I also wanted to keep the tension between these pawns. So did I hallucinate or something? Because I thought e4 was just going to run into this, and then here, and maybe this pawn would be under fire, but it's possible that black can't even get away with taking it. Rook d1, queen e5. And the engine adores white's position. I'm down a pawn, but yeah, my pieces are menacing. My bishop is coming out to f4 with tempo next. He still can't get this bishop into play without dropping the b7 pawn at the minimum. Okay, so I perhaps did not have to play a3. I could have just proceeded with e4 if I was willing to sacrifice the d pawn. But I think a3 is fine. He dropped back, and then e4. Now, I was criticizing this decision. I really thought he should play this way. And then maybe knight d7, and his structure isn't the greatest. He'd rather have a structure where his bishop can come to b7 more easily. But it looks like black can at least keep the position closed now, as he tried to do in the game, and try to struggle on, although the engine admits that this is clearly better for white. So he took here, I took with the knight, and I was liking my pawn duo. I was expecting b5 here, and then I was going to go knight ce5, hitting this pawn, and after bishop b7, I was considering stuff like b4, trying to lock down these two squares. If a5, there's rook b1, and I'm reinforcing this pawn. Although maybe black somehow can play against that pawn. Rook a4. And he can bring all this firepower down. Ooh, and maybe get c5 in and try to hit the e4 pawn. So this is something I'd have to prevent. So maybe I have to be more careful in how I go about doing that. Rook e1 is the engine's move. This crossed my mind as well if this position were to occur. Just reinforcing the e-pawn. And maybe preparing something like knight d3, trying to control c5. Because let's say, I know this might lose the c6 pawn, but let's just say the white knight goes back to d3. It's nice to have the rook on e1 so that knight takes e4 is not possible. Because with knight d3, I'm interfering with my queen's defense of the pawn on e4. So I was expecting b5, but then he didn't play that. He just developed. I went b4. Yeah, it looks fine. Rook e8. Probably spent too much time on these moves. Like, take a look at my clock. So I've got 12 minutes through 11 moves. I think that's okay. b4 took me a minute and a half. And rook d1 especially took me almost 2 minutes. So two pretty easy moves. I'm basically just deciding between good options and a good position. It's probably a bit too much for a 15-minute game. I mean, those two moves collectively maybe should take like a minute to a minute and a half tops. So I think I could have had the amount of time I took. They're actually the engine's top moves. But for the amount of time I spent on them, probably not worth it. The difference between a move like rook d1 here and bishop f4 is minimal. White has an equivalent advantage in either case. Like I said, I have this problem sometimes where I become a perfectionist when I have a good position and I want to win perfectly. And here with rook e8, I was seeing that he was thinking about maybe, I can't see into his head, but I thought maybe he was trying to go knight f8 to g6, and I wanted to defend my d-pawn so that if knight f8, I can play knight ce5 and he'll struggle to get this move in. My d-pawn is defended, no queen takes d4. So he played this move, and that just overlooks the reply, bishop f4. He had to go right back. Strategically speaking, black's game is lost. If white plays accurately here and builds up as expected, then white should win this game with a breakthrough at some stage. Black's just too cramped. You can't play the opening like this. He's made too many wasted moves. h6, bishop b4, bishop back to e7, rook to b8, rook to a8. Too many suboptimal moves. But then again, I didn't punish him. So knight a5, this move is also good. So I'm playing the engine moves and my advantage is increasing. But somehow it got out of control around here. Now I did the creative bishop c1 to b2. Bishop e3 is good for white. Yeah, I was just trying to stop knight g4 with tempo. This also is nearly +2. I'm just looking at the moves that the engine is following this up with. And they're all moves you'd expect, like rook c1, knight e5. Nothing out of the question. And again, this move, bishop c1, cost me almost a minute. Poor time management. Queen c7. Here I debated h4. The engine likes that move. I put the bishop on b2. Not sure why I rejected this. I think I just got obsessed with the idea of bishop b2 supporting d5 or encouraging d5 when this diagonal's open. But h4 was over +2. If g4, the bishop comes back to f4. Clever. I don't think I saw that. I think I just thought my knight had to move. But with the bishop coming back to f4, forcing the queen away, then knight e5. Yikes, this is awful for black. He could barely move a muscle. If knight takes e5, then d takes e5, and we have a discovery on the queen, and the knight is attacked. If knight d7, just pick up this pawn. Black's kingside is exposed, and he has no development to speak of. So h4 was looking good there. Instead, I play bishop b2. He plays bishop f8. I do play d5, but now I'm down to just about 5 minutes, and he's got 9. E takes d5, e takes d5. As black in this position, this is what you want. Even if your position's still bad, your opponent is using time, and it's getting messier. c5. Here I played a natural move, rook c1. This looked okay. Rook b8. I didn't understand that move at all. I really didn't know what he was doing with rook b8. The computer actually thought it was okay for a second there. So if b6, I can play d6. I was mentioning this bishop. So what's the idea? So if he takes knight c4, I'm on this bishop. Bishop e7, and then knight takes g5, discovery on the rook on a8. And white is just manhandling black, +4. With an engine running, after the excitement of the game has worn off, then yeah, I see this line clearly. But during a game, this still looks messy. Just the decision to play d6 after b6 would be a hard one and might cost me even more time. So I thought he was going to play b6, but he just sat tight with rook b8. Maybe the idea is simply to get the rook off the diagonal. But I didn't like it because if ever he plays b6 now, I can jump into c6 with tempo on the rook. So it seemed to me rook b8 was not a means to an end. Here h4 is still good, the lever on the other wing. I played queen f5, thinking that this knight was kind of glued to the d7 square in view of the necessity of defending the knight on f6. So bishop g7, I played d6. Queen here. Yeah, I played a lot of good moves. Queen c2, again, top move of the engine. I played many good moves, but it took me time. Now we're down to 2 minutes and change. It's almost a crapshoot. It's just a bullet game at this stage. He's got more time as well. Here, I traded on g7. And then I played h4. This move, in retrospect, I wasn't so satisfied with. I don't think it did much. There isn't a threat associated with h4. It's just kind of a vague idea of weakening his king side. So knight d2 is more to the point, but what happens if knight takes d6? Knight dc4. And despite being down a pawn, I am crushing. Probably because knight d6 is coming and his king is still open. Maybe I can give a check if necessary. The bishop... I feel like I've said this for the 10th time already, but the bishop has not gotten the game. So even this is strong for white. h4, queen f6. I think he did a good job, as I said. I mean, I felt like even though the game was still going in my favor, black was putting up good defense with dwindling time for both sides. And here I was concerned about holding the d-pawn. So again, this line that the engine is suggesting, knight h2 just says go take the d-pawn, I don't care. And then take here. That does look good. What was the issue? Okay, yeah, I didn't take on c5 here because he has both his knights pointed at that square. But if I play knight h2 as the engine is advocating, drive this knight away, even if it means losing the d-pawn, then I can cleanly take this, and he can't recapture with his knight. Yeah, this is great for white as well. So knight c4, b5, good move. Knight e3, and c4. And all of a sudden, after a couple more accurate moves from black, my advantage has shrunk to a half pawn. And with the time deficit, he's got almost twice as much time as I do. That's I'm not sure who to take. Maybe black is better because of that. Half pawn or an extra minute when you're both under 3 minutes, I'd probably take the extra minute if the game is sufficiently complicated. Okay, now it's going up in white's favor. It found knight d4, the move I played. This move just felt right because you uncover the attack on the bishop, or on the knight rather, with the bishop, and I'm directing my knight towards f5. So if here, I didn't calculate much further, but I thought this would just be good for me. Take with check, and then I was thinking of invading with the rook or the knight to d6. The engine doesn't think so, though, huh? It says knight d5 would be better. And then we've got this nice arrangement of knights along the d-file, all right in a row. Why is this so good? So queen runs away, knight c6. It's a knight invasion. It's a stampede. Rook b7, queen c3 check, king over, rook e1. Yeah, this is subtle. White's not winning anything directly in this line. Just the grip I have on the position is what's contributing to much of this advantage that white has been maintaining through the game. It's a slow build-up and then an eventual kill. So black did not take on d6, though. And again, if knight takes d6, I was probably just going to play a check and try to do something nasty with my knight, something like this. But maybe in the process, black can defend. How is this defending? If take, is he going to really move the knight? This almost looks like it wins a piece. Rook takes c8, knight takes d7. But the crafty engine, it always comes up with something. Not the actual crafty engine. That's a name of a program that used to be pretty popular and is still around, but you guys know what I mean. The clever engine. Bishop d5. Wow. Yeah, and this knight is trapped. Even if I run to a7, it doesn't matter. I can't get out through c6. His knight and his queen are covering that. There's some craziness going on. I'm not going to delve into all that because it's unnecessary. So bishop b7, I gave a check here. The king ran to g8. And knight e7 seemed like a pretty easy decision. Again, was it worth spending 20 seconds when I'm under a minute? No, probably not. I was about to play knight g4 because I was thinking, oh, this is awesome. Get a fork in this way. If here I can give a check here and his queen is also caught in the crossfire after he gives up the exchange, this is looking tremendous for white, but just not worth the time. So if queen e6, yeah, I'm still crushing, but I saw that after knight e7 in this case, my knight on g4 might be loose. So that's when I changed my mind and just said, you know what? An exchange is good enough when I have 30 seconds left. And here he must give the exchange. Rook takes e7, d takes e7, and try to continue from there. I'm sure it's now completely out of reach for black, but they had to try it. Probably queen e6, rook takes d7 is the cleanest way to kill him. Then if queen takes d7, bishop takes e4, I'm up a piece. If queen takes f5, I have rook takes b7, removing the defender. And then after rook takes b7, I even get a convenient double attack at the end. So from a board point of view, it's over, but the clock could still make things unclear. But as played, I don't think, even with my time situation, it ever got out of hand. Came over here. Knight d3 looks scary for a split second, but yeah, it's you guys see the evaluation. It's way too much. Probably he should have tried something like queen b2 here. Active move. He keeps an eye on the h8 square, and he is attacking my rook and f2, so I probably would have played this move and then tried to just win somehow. Rook c2 is nice. Trying to deflect the queen so we can deliver mate. But as played, he took here. I took check. It's mate in 4 if I take with the queen as well. That's kind of cool. So here, yeah, rook takes f6 was over. I could also do this with check too, and then go take the queen. But we're not going to split hairs with that amount of time left. So, kind of a confounding game because, as you guys saw, I feel like I played well. I had a lot of engine matches. The level of my play was pretty high, but I took too much time on certain moves. And time is a big part of the game. That's competitive chess for you. What is competitive chess if not for the time control that you're playing, right? The quality of the moves are one thing, but that little ticking device next to you, or if you're playing online, this little number on the side of the board that can catch up with you fast. I wish I would have seen h4. I think if there's one idea I wish I would have cued into a little bit better, it's probably h4. Like right here, this would have been good timing to play that move, with the idea that if h4, g4, trying to keep the position closed, I can bring my bishop to f4 with tempo. I think my play in time pressure was okay. It's just a somewhat tricky position to handle with limited time. But yeah, I got to do better about playing natural moves. Like really playing, what were the two moves I was criticizing like around here? b4 and rook d1. Maybe they are good. Like rook d1 had the point of defending d4 over protecting d4, so I could meet knight f8 with knight fe5. But in a 90-minute game, sure, I think I can spend that amount of time on those moves. 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes in total, let's say. But in a 15-minute game, not necessary. Just play a good move, good solid move, and continue with your better position. So interesting game having to do with space and time management. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll be back again soon with another video. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Let me know what your weekend plans are in the comment box. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Talk to you later.